Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Senate Standing Committee on Education. I'd like to welcome everyone here. We have a full audience today, and also to let everyone know we have an overflow room in room 129. If you do need to find your a seat, you're welcome to stand. But for those that wish to seat, if you don't have a seat, 129 is available. Mariah, if you would, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll,
Present in the room.
Senator Givens, Senator Harper Angel, Senator Higdon, Senator Kerr, Senator Meredith,
Present.
Senator Neal, Senator Southworth, Senator Stivers, Senator Thomas, Senator Wilson,
Here.
Senator West,
Here.
Chair Watt.
Present. Thank you so much. Senator Higdon, I'm not sure if he was called in the roll call. He was here, so just making sure he was noticed as well. I do ask any member of the committee or any of those here as a guest, if you have a cell phone, if you would please just turn that to silence or vibrate. I would greatly appreciate it as we conduct our business this morning. First of all, I want to ask, do any committee members have any special guests that they would like to recognize? Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know for sure that Hal Good and his team from Central Kentucky Community Action is here this morning. Yeah, I see them back there. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Good to see you too, Hal, and your constituents. Senator Carroll, do you have a guest?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have Dr. Steve Miracle, the superintendent with the Marshall County School System, is here. And I think that's the only superintendent I have present. Want to compliment Dr. Miracle on the job that he did during the tornado disaster that hit our part of the state and quite a bit of damage in Marshall County. Rallied the school system, and the school system was a huge support during the initial days of that event. So my compliments to him, his staff, all the folks at Marshall in the school system, staff and the students that pitched in to help. I also have another friend here from Trigg County that I just saw, superintendent of the Trigg County school system, and a really good friend of mine, Billy Thorpe, is here. And I probably shouldn't introduce him, but I'm going to anyways. Billy, it's good to see you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carroll. Thank you to all the guests that are here this morning visiting with us, especially those from Western Kentucky. And with that, I would like to call to the table Senator Jason Howell, representative out of Callaway County, and Murray, who's got some guests here with him that will be making a presentation this morning as it relates to their district's recovery efforts to the destructive tornadoes and storms that recently impacted many communities, including my own community in Taylor County, but also those from far west Kentucky. So, Senator Howell, welcome to the Education Committee. The floor is yours, sir. If you would just have your guests identify themselves to the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here with Joe Henderson from Mayfield Independent and Lenny Whalen from Dawson Springs Independent. You're independent, right? Yes, and Matt Matting down here from Graves County, the three of our superintendents in here. We appreciate you allowing us to come and talk a little bit to you about the experiences that they've had to deal with from an education standpoint, from damage to their, not just damage to their facilities, but even more damage to their students and their students' families that they've all experienced from this. I'll let them tell their story, but we hear a lot of people talk in our roles here, and there are certain things that stand out. And I had a conversation early on with Joe, and one of the things that he was talking about I'll always remember, and it stood out to me so much, is they ran a MASH-style triage unit in his basketball gym the night that these storms hit Mayfield. And I think that these men are professionals and they've prepared for everything, but I don't think that he's ever prepared to have a triage unit in his basketball gym. And that was just a level and the impact that everything that fell down upon them that night and what they experienced and what they had to deal with. That's the one thing that sticks to me. But you'd be much better off hearing it from them, so I'm going to turn it over to Joe first.
Thank you. Gentlemen, on your microphones, just hit the middle button there for a green light. If you'll pull those close to you if you don't care, that way we can hear you, and so as well as all the in the room.
Thank you. As Senator House said, my name is Joe Henderson. I'm the superintendent at Mayfield Independent Schools, and I just want to thank everyone here today for the opportunity to tell our story a little bit. I'll kind of start from the beginning. If I get too long, Senator Wise, you just hold your hand up, and I'll scale it back. But the night of the tornado on December the 10th, I got a phone call from the head of EMS after the tornado had passed through. My home was spared. My family was obviously trying to take shelter, basically telling us that he didn't even try to get a school bus because there were so many injured that he didn't have enough ambulances to get them to the hospital. So we were going to haul the injured or the hurt to the local hospitals as quickly as possible. Little did I know, the 2-mile drive to our bus garage, and an hour later that my bus garage and maintenance department took a direct hit. Every school bus I had, approximately 24 school buses were inoperable, some completely destroyed, and the building was completely destroyed. So at that time, I was able to give him contact information to Mr. Matting, the superintendent at Graves County, and his bus garage was spared for the most part and was able to provide the bus to be able to transport those injured folks to the hospital and get them help in any manner. Immediately, I called Mr. Creasenbach, head of the EMS, and told him I'd open the gym up. I said people were walking the streets; they had nowhere to go. Obviously, you know, the candle factory had over 100 employees in the candle factory that night. There were some fatalities, but many were being pulled from the rebel candle factory and sent to the gymnasium as a makeshift triage for say. These people were hurt, but not critical. Broken arms, broken legs, in wheelchairs, that's not critical. So we basically opened that up. Obviously, we were without power and water for that night. It was approximately 70 degrees that night it came through, so our emergency generator was enough to run the egress lighting and safety lighting enough to be able to house approximately between 150 and 200 people, give or take. They were in and out throughout the night. In the gymnasium that night, like I said, many were hurt, injured, others just nowhere to go. Some just came there because they were scared. They didn't know what to do. So one thing I learned that night is people turn to the school systems many times in a time of need and when they need help. So we did that particular night. We had cots, food, water, blankets, pillows, whatever, but obviously knowing that it was getting ready to turn cold the next day and our generator would not support the HVAC in the gymnasium, we basically communicated, and the Graves County school system provided buses, and we were able to transport those folks to a shelter on the south end of the county that was spared from the tornado and had water and heat, as well as moved all of our supplies out at that time. We'd taken in through the night to help to that area. And then our school district kind of developed into a supply center. People just started bringing stuff to us, and you know, it's like Senator House said, I didn't learn this in college. I didn't learn this, you know, anywhere as far as how to react or what to do. It was just kind of a natural reaction that, you know, we got to help our people some way. And so it developed into semi-truckloads of stuff coming in from left and right all over the state and even outside of the state. We had 40 to 50 people a day working in there, primarily employees, other volunteers, many students, basically you know, just separating items, clothes, anything from clothes to baby food to generators to anything you could possibly need, so as far as survival. So we did that for 2 weeks. We opened up usually in the morning at about 8, and we said we closed at 5, but a lot of times it was 8 o'clock at night before I got out of there because we obviously wasn't going to run anyone out the door that needed help. So that lasted for 2 weeks, and then we kind of started cleaning things up. And trying to think about what we do as far as getting back to school. Had many meetings with people asking about, well, what do you think about school? And I'll just be honest, it may be bad for a superintendent to say, but at that time I really didn't care about school. There was a bigger need, and it was to try to help our community and help our families. And I can't explain if you haven't been there. The pictures, they don't do it justice. Had a gentleman come in to volunteer. He was a veteran. He said, I've been in war zones. He said, war zones don't look like this. And so it's, it's very difficult. The kids ride on buses through that community every day, and they see that, and it's taking a mental toll on a lot of our families and a lot of our kids. So we're doing everything we can do as far as the mental health side of that. We did that during those weeks after the tornado, and we've continued to try to focus on that with our students, especially when they came back. Biggest challenges for us, one of the major challenges for us is, after discussing, we felt like some type of normalcy or routine might help our families more than anything. One thing we know about our families and our students is if they're at school, they're warm, they're safe, they got meals to eat, and they're around people that can obviously take care and handle any needs they might have. So we started back to school after we missed 10 days of school. We started back a week late after the new year, and we were able to work with the surrounding counties. We had students being bused in from 8 different counties, and right now we're busing in approximately 95 kids a day into our school district. And some of the people you see in the room today that are other superintendents, is no way it'd ever be possible that we could pull that off without their support and help. So I can't say enough about how much they've done and the amount of time that they put in and resources to be able to offer some type of normalcy and get those kids to school in our school district on a daily basis. So that's kind of what we've been through. It's going to be a long haul for us. I know that each one of us were impacted a little bit differently, but in our community, the families that were most in need now have nothing. Because if you look and draw a straight line through our community of the path the tornado took, it took all of our low-income housing areas out and many of the low-income rentals. So that's been very difficult, but we're just putting one foot in front of the other and going day by day and trying to figure out any way possible to get the families back into our community as soon as we can.
Thank you for your testimony.
I'm Leonard Whalen. I'm the superintendent with the Dawson Springs School District, and our story's kind of similar to Joe's in Mayfield. Our school became a triage center within probably 20 minutes of the tornado hitting, and we had folks coming into our school that had severe injuries. Our library kind of turned into the main triage center for those that were hurt the worst. We had impalements. We had trouble getting emergency responders in because all the routes coming into town from the main arteries were for the most part blocked. And we ran that triage center throughout the night and into the next day. The Pennyrile Park State Park opened up as a refuge for us to be able to send folks who basically came to school with nothing. They lost their house, they lost their vehicles. Pretty much all they had were the clothes on their back. And then, as Mr. Henderson mentioned, we quickly turned over into a relief center where the donations started coming in and kept coming in, and really were just overwhelmed trying to organize those donations, which we did, to where the folks in need could get those. I personally had over $100,000 to my property, but my house is still there. We didn't lose anything. Our belongings was still there. I have neighbors within 125 yards of my house that nothing's there but the foundation. And that's, I guess I say I'm lucky, but it makes you ask yourself, how did my place still there and my neighbors, lost everything. It's going to be a lengthy recovery for us in Dawson Springs, just like it will be in Mayfield and the other areas impacted. I had folks come from all over the state, colleagues in education and not in education. And when they came, I tried to take them just a brief tour through town because I want them to put their eyeballs on what occurred. Because, as Joe said, the video footage you see and the photos you see, they don't come close to what this is. And every single person that I would take on that tour, they would all say the same thing. Oh my God, I've never, ever seen anything like this. And the pictures and the videos I thought was bad doesn't even remotely touch this. And the human element is the most important element of all this. The mental health of our people, our community. Almost 20% of my staff lost everything they had. Now, we're a small outfit by school means, but almost 20% of my staff lost their homes, lost their vehicles, lost all their belongings. And we missed 14 days of school, and we're back at it. Those same people that lost it all, we missed 14 days of school. And we're battling COVID just like everybody else. We're actually out of school today and tomorrow because we don't have enough staff to be able to service our kids the way they need it. But I wanted this committee to know we're going to need some help. We're going to need some help for a while. This is not going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. And I know there's a lot of money that's been thrown out there to help, and that's great. But Mayfield and Dawson Springs and some of my other superintendent colleagues, we're going to need some financial help from a SEEK stabilization standpoint and also from a tax base stabilization standpoint. And that's something that really hadn't been touched on in a lot of the discussions I've heard up here. And those are things that are statutorily bound. So we need special relief and some stabilization for us to be able to get back on our feet and to be able to make sure that Mayfield schools and Dawson Springs schools and our other schools are viable for a long time. So I thank this committee for having us. We're down, but we're not out. And I can't commend my staff enough, and all the staff and all the donations and the folks across the state that have helped us. The amount of help we've received has been immeasurable, but we're going to need more. And I thank you for the time.
Go ahead. Please go ahead. I was just going to introduce you two. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Matthew Matting. I'm superintendent at Graves County Schools, and I'll try not to be redundant, and because my story is very similar to what you've already heard. As far as the aftermath of the event, our goal was how do we support our community the best way we possibly can, and so we became a resource in the ways that were listed here. And one of the things I would like to say that was stated earlier is just the amount of support we received from districts all across the state, from organizations across the state, was overwhelming. But at the same time, you felt the love and generosity being poured out on us, and so that was a huge encouragement to us as we began the recovery process. I would like to also reiterate one thing that Lenny said. We are moving forward. We're dealing with the reality that we're in. We're trying to meet social, emotional needs, and we can't overstate how thankful we are to be able to testify to you and for what you've already done for us with relief. We do ask that you keep in mind that this recovery process is years long, and we know that you will, and that's why you've asked us to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things to touch on. I want to throw some other questions back to these two. As you know, we passed Senate Bill 5 that was tied in with House Bill 5 that Representative Heath, who's here with us, had sponsored and allocated $30 million for education. Now we're working through the process of being able to allocate some of these funds. And I would ask these two gentlemen to kind of talk about some of the more specific needs, how they were impacted. I know Lenny talked a little bit about the taxing structure, but some of the other things that they're facing, so the committee has a good understanding of what we're dealing with here. Thank you.
So first of all, I do want to thank you for Senate Bill 5 and the timeliness of getting that through. I know there was $30 million allocated in there that can be used for primarily infrastructure, wraparound services, and transportation. and we do appreciate that, and that's going to be very helpful. But in looking through the bill, there were some things that we still felt like that were obviously major issues as far as funding. Number one, to this day, since the tornado, I've lost 30 kids. You say, well, that's not many kids, 29 kids. You say, well, that's not many kids, but if you looked at the way we're funded at state level, that's approximately a little over $157,000 just since the tornado. And keep in mind, I said earlier, we're busing 95 kids in a day that do not live in my district. So once those kids are placed in homes somewhere, which is not likely in Mayfield because we do not have the residents there for them to move to, then obviously there's going to be even more at the end of the year that I will not have to attend my school in the future. So obviously you say, where do you come up with that number? Well, it's basically all the add-ons in the SEEK formula that go above and beyond the $4,000 base. SEEK is where that number came from. So there will be more to come to there. So, my ask to this committee would be is your work to try to have some type of hold harmless on the ADA within the SEEK formula for up to 5 years. And I know that's a big ask, and I know you guys are only, your budget's only two years, and I know you can only do so much from that perspective. But our town will not be back to where it is, before the tornado in 5 years. But I do feel like that will be ample of time for us to at least have a plan in place moving forward that we can still be able to, weather the loss and funding and that type thing moving forward. The other thing is a big deal is the local revenue. PVA guy just called me before I came into this meeting. And initially, he gave me a rough figure, rough, and he's come back. That figure's not as high as what he said before, but there was about $30 million in his opinion that was lost in assessment value tax base within my community. That now is obviously I'm going to take a local revenue hit on that, as well as motor vehicle and utility tax as well. So there's going to be a pretty big gap with the local revenues that I would ask that if we could figure out a way to help support our districts in that, because I know many of our districts are in the same situation. Just some other things, disaster days or emergency days, whatever you want to call it. We had many of our staff that were in there working hours and hours in the supply center with the triage, whatever that might have been, and many others working behind the scenes. They're on the phones on a daily basis trying to keep in touch with our families and see what their needs are, find them first, make sure they're okay, trying to take care of those families. So those disaster days, if could be granted, would help offset a major expense for our districts because, and I know I talked, and I don't want to speak for Marshall County because I know Steve's in the room, but I've talked to their finance officer on the way up here, and they feel like that $750,000 in salaries and fringes that they are going to have to pay out of their general fund if not granted any emergency or disaster days, just because that's extra work for those people beyond their contracted days. So if granted these disaster or emergency days, however you would like to word them, they can use that as part of their contract. Obviously that would be a huge help to the districts moving forward. A few other things that I'll throw out. One other thing I'll throw out there is a lot, my entire maintenance department, as I said before, and transportation department was destroyed. I've got a lot of, we were well insured, but there's still a lot of insurance gaps. You take all of our buses that are 10 years old or newer or full replacement, there's no problem. But being a small district and not putting many miles on buses, we run buses up to 18, 20 years a lot of times, and they're still in good shape. And so the problem I'm running into, though, is I've got about 5 or 6 buses that are totaled that are over 10 years old. The insurance pays you $10,000 for them. You can't go buy buses on a parking lot or used car lot. You got to order new ones, and they're $95,000 approximately a piece. So there's $85,000 gap for every bus that you run into that with. There's a lot of other situations. I'm not going to go into any of those others that where we have some of those gaps as well. So those are some of the primary things that we're running into that we didn't feel like when looking at the language within Senate Bill 5 that would really be an allowable expenditure under that particular bill.
I think in Dawson Springs, Joe and I have talked ad nauseum in the last several weeks about this, and Joe's got a thorough list, and my list would be almost identical to Joe's with needs and concerns. We also lost 29 students in Dawson Springs. You know, the amazing thing about that, though, we lost 29 students to other districts. There were, I believe, the final deceased count in Dawson Springs was 18 in Dawson Springs. And we didn't lose one kid. We didn't lose one student. And how that happened like that, I can't explain, but we were so fortunate in that. But with that being said, those 29 students, as Joe mentioned, those turned into a significant amount of money for our district to be able to operate and to do the things that we need to do. And then the transportation situation, we're not in the same situation as Joe there. We did not lose any facilities or buses or anything like that. Matter of fact, I think you guys are running one of our buses that we loaned to Joe, just like all of my fellow superintendents and districts in Western Kentucky did. But the need, as we mentioned, is going to be there. Appreciate this committee hearing this. On the emergency days, I do know that there is a bill in process right now by my representative, Myron Dawsett, over in the House. And I do think, in looking at that bill, and Joe, you've reviewed that bill as well, I do think that bill would fit the needs that would kind of help us and all of our other districts that are in similar circumstances with emergency days and things of that nature that would be helpful. But again, thank you to the committee for taking the time.
Just a couple other things, Chairman, and then we'll move on and let you get to your business. There are lots of ancillary costs associated with this that are shared amongst the districts. I've dealt with a lot of our superintendents, and the men and women in the Western Kentucky area have worked together really well on a number of issues well before this, and it's really continued here as well. Joe was good enough to kind of put together a list that I think I've shared with you before, and as an example, I'm amazed that we bus our kids and get everybody to school in a normal situation, and they're dealing with kids in 8 different districts. Well, these superintendents have helped with this, and they're picking these kids up and coordinating drop-offs with Mayfield Independent to coordinate all this. That has an additional cost in time and capital for the districts that are helping out Joe's students. So that's just as one example of some of the things that we'll need to look at as a committee and as a body. We appreciate you having us here. I neglected to name that Jeremy Roach is here. He's from Caldwell County, where Princeton, they were greatly affected. I think they talked amongst themselves, and these gentlemen drew the short straws on who had to get up here and talk. But I didn't want to neglect the fact that he was there too, and had a lot of the similar stories that these two have had, and because of the direct hit that they took through Princeton and Greater Caldwell County with that as well. If there's any questions for anyone, we'd be happy to entertain them. Otherwise, we appreciate your time, and thank you for having us and listening to what was going on.
Senator Howell, thank you. You couldn't have had 3 better representatives here to talk about the situation. Thank all of you all, and the others that are here today in the audience. Representative Heath, thank you for your leadership on House Bill 5 as well. Some of the issues that you did brought up, this is unfortunately not an appropriation committee, but we're glad to hear those, and you have voices up here that will take those on. We do have a few questions and comments. Senator Stivers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you make a good segue into what I'm going to ask about, because we sit here, and you as superintendents and us as an education committee and appropriators, we understand when you say ADA, SEEK, but I want to run through this to get out of the alphabet soup of Frankfurt. So average daily attendance is what you're talking about, the ADA, and you get an allotment based on what your snapshot, I think it's in September or October, of what your average daily attendance is, and that's how you're compensated from the state at the SEEK allotment, which is $4,000 per student, and then the additional strands of care that give you other funding. So to that extent, that's one of your funding streams. So you think because of this, each system that was impacted, you're going to lose students. So therefore, your funding stream from Frankfurt is going to be diminished. And that's where you're coming with that, with the ADA and the SEEK allotment. The second component is the property valuations. I'm going to assume that you're much like my hometown. About 52% of all property taxes collected go back into the school system. So you had a piece of property that was appraised at $150,000 that had a home on it that is now gone. The property may be worth $25,000, so you lost $125,000 in taxable value at whatever your rates are. So you've lost that funding stream because you can't, if I lost my home, you can't tax me for the $125,000 in lost value. Those are your two primary funding streams that may not return or may return at a very slow rate. That's your real problem, because I think it's easy to understand, well, we got to replace a building. We need $5 million for a new bus garage or $90,000 for a new bus. But you've got a recurring funding stream issue that may take a few years to get back to, or you may never get back to, but you still have operational expenses because you've built schools, you have bond and debt service payments, you have other recurring annualized costs that do not shift. So is that a pretty accurate assessment of what you're having to look at?
That's an excellent job of explaining this. Sounds like you've done that before. But
Well,
yes.
somebody told me I'd been around here for a quarter of a century, so I might know something
Is that
about
right?
it.
Yeah. You know, one thing I would ask, though, freezing the ADA, it's similar to what we've done during COVID.
Back at the 2018 levels.
Right. 18, 19 levels are what we're currently using for this school year. Some of us, there's a handful of districts in the state because of quite a bit of growth during that time, and I just happen to be one of those districts. There's 10 or 12 that are using actually the 1920 numbers, and I won't get into why that was. Obviously, it was more beneficial for me to do that because of significant growth in our district when we had to make that decision. But one thing that I will say is the ADA is important to stabilize, in my mind, for all of our districts that were impacted, but not the assessment value-wise of that. Because, as you know, there is a sliding scale there. The lower your assessments, the more support from the state level. The higher your assessments, the less you get from the state. An equity issue from years ago. Obviously, we would like to readjust those assessments as soon as possible. That's incorporated into that formula. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is not freeze everything involved with that formula. We're asking for it to freeze the ADA moving forward.
And I understand how that balances out based on the SEEK allotment and what happened in 1992, somewhere. But yeah, that is, your funding stream becomes the natural replacement, and that's, for most people, it's easily grasped when you talk about recouping $90,000 or the insurance or the FEMA. FEMA's not going to cover lost revenue streams. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Stivers, just to piggyback on that real quick, and Joe, we talked a little bit about this last night, and you hit on this. You said to see if people are going to build back or allow them time to build back. And the reason why we're saying looking for this to potentially go 5 years is because what that 5 years does is it helps us financially stabilize ourselves, but it also puts us in a position where we can be well planned and be ready to make changes along the way to once that gets back to quote-unquote normal at the end of that time frame. And that is a piece of that puzzle as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have 3 more members signed up with questions or comments. Central West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Superintendent Henderson. And you may have stated this and I may have missed it. Have you put pencil to paper and come up with kind of a grand total for your district, not going forward revenues, but just the amount of money you would need to get back to zero?
Yes and no. Like I said, the PVA office just called right before I came in, so it's going to change some of my figures because they gave me a different figure than he's gave me recently on that. I have some figures that I've sent to Senator Howell and Representative Heath. Basically, I'm showing insurance gaps that I spoke of earlier of approximately $700,000. I'm showing, and this is my district alone, these folks are impacted differently. I'm showing about $40,000 worth of expenses. One thing I didn't mention earlier is I had to get a large generator from Chicago to be brought down to be able to run our gymnasium to run the supply center, and there's obviously several expenses with that, as well as overtime and things with custodials. And I know we're working through FEMA on some of this stuff too. But to answer your question, I cannot give you accurate numbers. Number one, the accuracy of giving you the loss of MVR taxes and things of that sort at this point is virtually impossible, as well as, utility tax. I can't do that either. And then now I have to go back and refigure the property value tax. The property value, and please don't hold me to this number, based on what I was just told before I came in here, the annual loss in property value is going to be about $250,000 a year just in real property assessment value loss, which I thought was going to be much higher than that. So that was a good news when I got that phone call in there before we came in. One of the things that I'll mention, though, right now, we still are in the middle of collecting taxes for the full school year. And I can tell you right now that there's $2.4 million worth of taxes, a combination of franchise tax, real property, and MBR taxes that have not been collected to the point during this school year. And that's $2.4 million. So I'm not sure the collection side of that, moving forward, how that's going to impact us for the rest of this year as well.
Yeah, thank you. Chairman Wise mentioned that, this isn't appropriations and revenue, but I can tell you this, that there are several members on this committee who are also on appropriations and revenue, and you've got 3, 4, 5 leadership positions on this committee, both sides of the aisle. And our initial bill, I think we always considered that as a down payment. We were going to keep an open mind. But I want to thank you for your leadership and kind of putting bureaucracy to the side and putting people first and taking immediate action. I want to thank all of you for doing that. Thank you.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for being here today and sharing with us your stories about the tornadoes. And of course, I come from Warren County, Bowling Green. We had our share of damage there, not to the scale that you did. We still have over 1,000 families that are displaced. My question for you today, and maybe Senator Howell, you might be better at answering some of this, but in regards to Senate Bill 5, House Bill 5, the funds that were appropriated, the $30 million for education, have either of y'all seen any of that money yet?
No, sir.
Okay. And Senator Howell, as far as the money that was appropriated for the RVs for housing, has FEMA delivered any housing themselves, or have we delivered any of that money that we appropriated?
I understand that that's in the process, but I don't know that they've actually taken delivery yet.
I was, just before we came in, there was a trailer sitting out front, and we were able to walk through that and tour that. At 2 o'clock tomorrow, the first one will be delivered to Mayfield, and so they're in that process right now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thanks again for being here. Amazing stories, just again, y'all's leadership in your communities, and just incredible devastation when you drive through it and see it with your own eyes. Saw the same type of devastation. Our population's much greater, so the degree of percentage of damage to Bowling Green was a lot less, but yet no less devastating to the families that endured it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And again, as my colleagues have said, thank you for the presentation. Senator Howell, thanks for bringing them here to this committee to have this conversation. You had a very specific ask that I want to reflect on briefly and see if it is in the House bill that you mentioned, and if it's not, maybe we get it in there or we alert staff through this conversation to make sure we get that done. And that was around the disaster emergency days as part of those contract days. Do you know if that's in the House bill or not?
Senator Givens, that is specifically in that, and Richard Heath was also involved in helping with that bill. I didn't mention him earlier, but thank you, Richard, for doing that.
Right.
And there is specific language in there for staff and things of that nature.
Very good, very appropriate. Now, a quick longer-term question. This is a little more vexing and challenging. All of us look at your communities and the pride and the resilience and the resolve, and you all inspire us. You really do. The response is amazing among your people, and as you've indicated, the outpouring of support across the Commonwealth. One of the challenges, and obviously we stand ready to provide all the funds that we can to assist you in that period of transition, but as the President indicated, it's going to take a few years to get back. You indicated the same. Over that period of time, that opportunity and that challenge of maintaining the effort starts to cause communities to fracture. We don't want to see that there. Are there other things we can do longer term that you can think of? And you don't have to answer it today. Just work through your senators and your representatives. We need to find a way to sustain the resolve to the point in time when you can flourish and be even better than you were. And if you have any advice for us, let us know on the policy side.
I know Senator Howell and I have had that conversation just recently about we don't know what we need. I know that sounds a dumbfound statement, but right now I can tell you the immediate things, but there's going to be many needs going down the road that we don't even foresee coming right now. I just I thought about the other day is the tragedy that Marshall County dealt with a few years ago, and it was that month of the year and that day rolls back around. I think about how that might impact our kids from a mental health perspective. But you guys have already addressed that through the Senate Bill 5, but where we can use that wraparound service for that mental health support. But things like that right now, we haven't thought about or how that might impact us moving forward. But I'm sure there'll be others. But thank you.
Senator Stivers, another comment.
Yeah, a question. You've talked about Senate Bill 5, and people may wonder what that is. That was a $200 million appropriation that we set out. I think $45 million. One was for temporary housing, 30 was for education needs. And to that extent, people say, well, you put $200 million, but why 45? Because we don't really know, and you all don't even know, what the other 155 may be used for in other areas. And I'm going to assume there may be more or less, that there may be needed because of our discussion about ADA and taxes, more, but maybe not now, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 3 years from now. So my question to that extent, is there any way you can give us, and this is just from the educational system, this is not going to be from the city government or the county government estimates, kind of a timeline you may have or that you all put out that you will start knowing we will need beyond A, which we've done, we will need B, C, D. Have you all anyway been able to map that out, or is that just really too early? Because that's why we didn't just say, here's $200 million, because we hadn't gotten input, rightfully so. But you understand my question.
President Stivers, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you in Dawson Springs, really since December the 10th, everything we've done's been reactionary. Right. We reacted to the tornado, we did the triage, we did all those things, up to the culmination of trying to get our students and our staff back in school. So, I mean, really, everything we've done's just been looking forward literally a week or two, you know what I mean, trying to get through the next couple days, next couple weeks. So the question you ask is a great one, but honestly, in Dawson Springs, we've had no opportunity to even give that any consideration, you know what I'm saying? But it is a great question.
And that's what I wanted individuals to understand. We really don't know what we don't know. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, Senator Ivers. I got Senator Carroll with the closing comment, and Representative Heath is going to make a comment also. So, Richard, if you want to make a way kind of close to that table, I'll let you kind of finish up there. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen. Thank you for your leadership, as others have stated. I got a taste of what you all saw and what went on in your communities in Marshall, and your leadership is invaluable. Take care of yourselves. You're going to be needed for the long haul. All of you that are here from those districts, please make sure you do that. As we talk about the future, let's talk about today in what your needs are. And let's, if you can, talk a little bit about the structure. Do you all feel like that as we have things set up now, specifically with the state agencies, is the structure in place that you feel like you have the avenues to take care of your immediate needs? Are there adjustments that we need to work on, communication avenues, physical needs that you have as it stands today?
So working with KDE will be something that is going to, now that the money is I assume in KDE's hands, is just the procedures and protocols of how do we go about drawing down those funds, what that might look like. Some of our counties that are actually transporting some of our students weren't ruled or not emergency disaster areas. So there has been some discussion with them on how we would do that. Does that need to be done any different because of that particular scenario? Whether the funding runs completely through Mayfield Independent and I'm invoiced from those other 8 districts. Those are some of the discussions right now that we just have to get answers to. And I've obviously as soon as we can, we need to start supplementing these other districts that have. Myself, I've had to hire 4 extra employees to make this happen, and I know some of the other districts have had to hire some employees, and obviously they have some physical, financial liability as far as the transportation side of the buses, running the buses as well. The other things, the thing that I mentioned briefly, I didn't touch on or go in depth on that concerns me a little bit is just the uncollected or the outstanding taxes not collected for the remainder of the school year, because that money obviously is we use and will need to use for this particular school year, as well as some of the funding gaps and things of that sort. Because we've got to start ordering buses and things of that sort. We order a bus right now, we're a minimum of 6 months out getting a brand new bus, and that's what's kicking us to the top of the list because of our situation. If not, it'd be 9 months. So some of those are 2 of the things that I can see that are most pressing. Most of the other things, and then the disaster days for this particular year. The other things are kind of moving forward beyond this particular school year, but obviously would need to be addressed as soon as possible. Okay. Does that answer you?
It does. Have you all been able to access any of the private donations that have come in the various areas?
We've not in Dawson Springs, and honestly, I'm not exactly sure what the process is going to be for the pot of money that's out there now. Obviously, we'll be going through KDE, as Mr. Henderson said, but really not exactly sure how that's going to work just yet. And just lastly, Senator Carroll, really the key to all these funds from our perspective is just having flexibility and having the ability to get access to that is key. And I know that's, some kind of difficult, but that's...
So just streamlining that process as much as we can.
Thank you.
Okay. I know Mayfield, Graves, there's a community fund, and Marshall also. Have you all been able to access that? I know Representative Heath worked on that to help get that set up.
We haven't we have a fund that was set up from an alumnus that's basically run through our family resource centers. But outside of that, we've been able to access some of those funds then specifically to help with expenses for the displaced families and students and that type thing. But outside of that, there's nothing we've been able to access.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the indulgence.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up on this a little bit? Joe and I have had some conversations about some of his initial work with KDE, and I think KDE has had some very legitimate questions that we're actually going to have a discussion today on trying to address. As you well know, there's a process for everything in Frankfort, but there's no process for this yet. So we're creating the part of the process in there and trying to Senator Carroll's point, to streamline the process. We're just now getting to the point where we're going to touch on some of that.
Representative, I'm going to give you the closing comment. We still have 3 items on the agenda for today for voting on.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. Senator Howe just covered one of my comments, is the process. I wanted to address Senator West's question about the immediate needs, and I think Mr. Henderson mentioned the buses. Add $500,000 to that immediate need list so they can get buses ordered. I wanted to comment on the process. Through the conversations I've had, here's my vision of a potential process that we need to discuss. When you build a new house, you go to the bank, you borrow the money, and there's X amount of dollars in there for you to use as the needs occur. And as the house is being built, you're drawing on that line of credit. I would like to see a process put in place so our education folks and non-education folks, as they have needs, the money has been earmarked and they can start drawing that money down on an as-needed basis to cover their expenses on a month-to-month basis. I'll throw one quick example in there. Mayfield Electric Water has an ask of $24 million, and I'll be glad to explain in detail what that covers. They don't need all $24 million in the next 6 months. Some of it they won't need for 2 years from now. But if we could put a process in place so that money is earmarked for them with specific things they can use it on and let that money be drawn down as they need it, I think it would streamline the process.
Thank you so much, Representative. Gentlemen, thank you all again for your testimony. Thanks for your leadership. We're there with you. We're there to help to rebuild, and thank you again so much.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Chairman.
As I mentioned, we have 3 items on the agenda: Senate Bill 60, Senate Bill 61, Senate Bill 94. Senator Carroll, I'm going to allow you to go first. I'm going to go out of order and allow you to go ahead with Senate Bill 94. If you can make your way to the table, I'm not sure if you have any guests wishing to testify with you in support, if they can make their way also.
My name is Danny Carroll. I'm the state senator for the 2nd District.
Good morning. Johnny Collette, the Deputy Director of the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute.
Good morning. Diana Barber, Interim Executive Director of the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to present this bill. This is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart and something that is included in part of my mission in being here in Frankfort, and that is to advocate for those with special needs. This bill has to do with the Work Ready Scholarship in Kentucky and the community, the comprehensive transition and post-secondary program. And many of you all have heard me talk about this. This is the college post-secondary program for students with intellectual disabilities. That helps to allow these students to attend college for the purpose of employment in the long run. So what I'm going to do, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Collette kind of explain the program briefly so those that are not familiar with this program will understand what it is we're trying to do.
Thank you, Senator Carroll and Chairman Wise and committee. Comprehensive transition and post-secondary programs are higher education programs for students with intellectual disabilities. So these are programs that have been through an approval process with the United States Department of Education, and as a result of that, they can offer access to federal student aid. These programs were approved with the last authorization of the Higher Education Act back in 2008, and what these programs do is they support students with intellectual disabilities who want to continue their education so that they can better prepare for competitive integrated employment and also for independent living. Now, based on our most recent data, we know that only about 6% of students with intellectual disabilities who exit Kentucky high schools are enrolled in college or university in the year that follows. The University of Kentucky Human Development Institute has served as the statewide technical assistance center for this work since about 2010, and the dual focus of our work is this, that we focus on enhancing and improving current programs that exist in Kentucky, but we also focus on supporting interested colleges and universities around establishing programs like this, and we certainly appreciate the General Assembly's support of this work in the last 2 state budgets. Very briefly, there are currently 3 Kentucky Comprehensive Transition and Post-Secondary Programs, or CTPs. Those are at Northern Kentucky University, Murray State University, and Bluegrass Community and Technical College. There are several other colleges and universities across the Commonwealth who are at various stages of interest in terms of establishing a program like this, and we're working closely with them to provide the information that they need. There are currently 16 students enrolled across these comprehensive transition and post-secondary programs in Kentucky, and since 2010, these programs have served nearly 100 students. Now, of those 100 students, nearly 60% of those students have completed the program. Now, what might be an interesting comparison, and I think I'm right about these numbers, if we look at 2019-20 at the 6-year graduation rate at 4-year public universities was just over 56%. So when we take a look at students with intellectual disabilities entering these programs, it appears that they have a comparable persistence rate for the particular courses of study in which they're engaged. As you know, the General Assembly took similar action of what is requested in Senate Bill 94 back in 2013 and again in 2016 with respect to the KEYS program. And I'll just say from a personal perspective of being here for many years and doing work, sort of a 360 view of this work in my own personal life, I'm proud of our state's work over the years to remove barriers for students with disabilities, including students with intellectual disabilities, and I look forward to even more ways that we can work together to make sure that we increase those opportunities for success in academics, employment, and community engagement. With that, thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, just the basic point of the bill is to allow these students access to the Work Ready Scholarship. It ties it into the CTP program, the standards it gives 3 years for those students to complete the program. And it's important that you understand that this program is geared towards those students gaining employment. You all know the efforts that we have to expand our workforce in the Commonwealth. Senator Alvarado has had efforts to close at some point in the future to do away with our sheltered workshops in Kentucky for these folks. And for us to do that, we have to make sure that there are employment opportunities outside of sheltered workshops for these folks. And this is a step that will allow that to happen for students coming out of high school and give them the college experience. And so we are very excited about this, and we have support. We took the time to meet with all the stakeholders in this effort to make sure that there were no issues. And I'm going to let Ms. Barber speak to that just a second.
Yes, as I say, our agency, Kentucky Higher Education, administers these programs, and we are fully supportive of this bill. We think it's a good policy, helpful for the students, and it's a very well-targeted and well-drafted bill, and we think that the cost associated with it is very reasonable, and it's well worth the money spent. So we have no issues with it whatsoever.
Thank you, Senator Carroll.
Sure, that's all we have. If there are any questions, be happy to answer.
Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Carroll, thank you for bringing this bill forward. And the Work Ready scholarships, if my memory serves me right, it's last dollar. Whatever the student doesn't qualify for federal aid wise, and the Work Ready scholarship picks up the last dollar. And would I be correct in assuming that the majority of the cost of this program be paid with federal dollars? That most students.
Well, the CTP program is these students have access to the same funding. They do a FAFSA, Pell Grants, whatever would be available to a traditional student. So, and then these students pay for college like everyone else does. There is a hope at some point in the future that there can be some funding to help with other costs to make sure that we can continue to expand this program, but transportation issues sometimes arise, but we just want to make sure it continues to grow. But understand, this is revenue for our colleges and universities just like any other student, and these students go through the same process. As was mentioned, they have the KEYS dollars available. They do a FAFSA, Pell Grants are available, and whatever else might be available to other students. And for whatever funds aren't covered, it's up to the student's family to cover those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good bill. Commend you, Senator Carroll, on bringing it forward. Just a quick question, just curiosity really. In terms of the program, you've indicated that you have like a 60% graduation rate. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. 60% of those complete the program.
Complete the program. Do you do any research or follow any of these students to see how it actually plays out in terms of what they've gained in terms of the program?
Appreciate the question. We're happy to come back another time and provide some more information from the specific sites like Northern, Murray, and BCTC, who will know more specifically. Anecdotally, I can tell you that very often these students sometimes even stay on campus working where they had internships while they were in the program, and certainly there are great stories from Murray, Northern, and Murray and Northern specifically. BCTC has really been in a relaunch mode the last couple of years and doing very well, but there are great stories of post-school outcomes there that are very positive.
One more question, if I may. Do these programs, or is it common for these schools to actually assist the students when they come out of these programs to transition from the program forward?
And if I might answer that, there is support where it, through OVR, that it goes into an employment support situation, and these students do internships as part of the program. And so there is support past that to ensure that the employment is successful.
Good program. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to mention Senator Dennis Parrott. Senator Parrott, one of the first things I did when I got to Frankfort 7 years ago was went and shook his hand. He had a bill that in high school that created the alternate diploma for students, and I think all of this has kind of grown out of that. I know there are many here that supported that legislation, but it has grown each year, and we keep trying to expand those opportunities. These folks are a viable part of our workforce in the Commonwealth, and they can have such a positive impact on their employment, their colleagues, their coworkers. So there are many opportunities for these folks to contribute to this Commonwealth, and I think this is another program that will expand their opportunities for post-secondary. I cannot begin to tell you the impact that this program has on students with special needs, with intellectual disabilities, not just from a social aspect, but truly from an educational aspect. It makes a difference. It's worth the investment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carroll. Seeing no further questions on the bill, do we have a motion? We have a motion, Senator West. Do we have a second? We have a second from Senator Harper Angel. Mariah, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Givens. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator West. Senator Wilson. Chair Wise.
Aye. By a vote of 13 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Senate Bill 94 moves on. Thank you, Senator Carroll. I'm going to assume my position from up here and move on to Senate Bill 61. Senate Bill 61 is an act relating to early high school graduation. I am the bill sponsor of this. Basically, Senate Bill 61, in essence, is a cleanup bill to clean up some obsolete statutory requirements as it relates to early high school graduation. If you look at the bill that's presented in your packet, it will eliminate the requirement for benchmarks of some obsolete end-of-course examinations. It also eliminates the reference or scoring benchmarks on the specific ACT examination. And then lastly, it requires early high school graduation requirements and future revisions to be established in administrative regs promulgated by the Kentucky Board of Education. I'm more than happy to answer any questions from any members for Senate Bill 61 if there are any. We have a motion from Senator Meredith. Do we have a second? We have a second from Senator Denise Harper Angel. Mariah, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth.
Aye.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator West. Senator Wilson. Chair Wise.
Aye. By a vote of 12 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Senate Bill 61 moves on. Our last bill on the agenda for today is Senate Bill 60. It's an act relating to preschool, and I am the sponsor of that bill. It does have a committee sub. The committee sub is in your folders. There was a committee sub that was sent electronically yesterday, but there have been changes that were made to the committee sub as it came to the members this morning. Real briefly, Senate Bill 60, it deleted Section 1, subsection 6G, but based on input from multiple stakeholders and with also the endorsement of the Head Start Director, John Mountjoy, the committee sub does the following. It continues to allow the Head Start Director to initially certify whether the Head Start program is fully utilized. However, if the superintendent and the Head Start Director are unable to reach an agreement or whether a Head Start program is fully utilized, either the superintendent or the Head Start Director shall notify the Commissioner of Education, and within 30 days of the notification, the Commissioner shall review the details as presented by the Head Start Director and shall make a determination of whether a Head Start program is fully utilized, and the Commissioner may certify full utilization on behalf of Head Start. Now, you're probably asking, Senator Wise, why did you bring this bill to us this morning? Well, it's for better collaboration. There are programs across the Commonwealth that are working extremely well with preschool and Head Start. However, we do have some programs that need better cooperation. And with this, it provides that collaboration to improve. And one of the things that many times we forget about up here, we talk about collaboration, about funding, and about positions, but we forget about children. Many times we don't talk about kids enough, and especially as it relates to 4-year-old children. So this bill will improve upon the better coordination to make sure everyone is working together. Because the last thing we want to do, we want to prevent divisiveness. We don't want to create it, and there's already been some divisiveness. That's what this bill is encouraging to do. I'm happy to take any questions. I do see we have some in the audience or from the committee. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Senator Wise. And Senator Wise, I guess my question, goes to the actual language of the bill. We have a tremendous opportunity in this state right now to have fully funded pre-K for all children. And yet when you read this bill, it limits pre-K only to those children who are at risk of educational failure and who are 4 years old. It seems to me that if we can provide for universal pre-K, which was in the governor's budget, and again, I don't know how much consideration that received in House Bill 1, if at all. It's now over here, and we have a chance to look at it and make some improvements on it. If we're going to provide and have the opportunity to provide universal pre-K to all children, then the language of this bill seems very limiting to my respect. And that's my biggest concern with Senate Bill 60 as presently written, is that it just doesn't go far enough.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Was that a comment or was that a question?
Probably more of a comment than a question, but you're certainly welcome to respond to that.
Thank you, Senator. I know we've had this discussion before. It's not an appropriation of what we're doing with this bill, but just more of a collaboration and more of an improvement upon working relationships between all parties involved. And I will say, This bill was vetted through the Labor Cabinet and the Economic Development Workforce. It was vetted also with the eyes of the Community Action Councils, as well as preschool and the Head Start programs. So I do think we brought a lot of people to the table with the bill as it's presented. We have a motion to adopt the sub by Senator Givens. We have a second from Senator Stivers. All those in favor of adopting the sub, please do so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, Senator Givens. Next question, Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I know you've done some work, a lot of work on this bill, and thank you for this committee sub and the changes that you've made so far. I think that answers a lot of the questions, but this is a process, and if there's further questions, there's other places along the way that we can correct them, and I appreciate your willingness to work with us on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Higdon. Senator Harper Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, does Senate Bill 60 prevent fully utilizing federal funds? And if so, why would we do that?
It does not.
Is there anyone here that wants to speak against the bill?
We do. I was going to get through questions first and then allow. We do have Sharon Price with Community Action that is going to be willing to testify.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Senator Southworth.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the Labor Cabinet and Head Start Director and so forth, but I want to get a better handle on what is the issue outside of the institutional representation. What's the issue on a ground level basis that, and this might be a little bit rhetorical, but not entirely, so that we all have a better handle on what has happened in one of these or two or three of these places that we can all get our heads around. Does this solve it?
Unfortunately, sometimes we need people to come to the table to force them to talk and to resolve issues. So there's been problems. I've been made aware of issues from school superintendents, from members in the legislature, a legislative body, about issues pertaining to this. As I mentioned, a large percentage are working very, very well, but we also have some that we need to make sure that we have collaboration. That's what is in the best interest of our children, and we need adults and those in the system to work together to collaborate better.
Are you suggesting, or are you saying like that the kids are going to the preschool when they were eligible for Head Start and they should have gone to the Head Start and they didn't, or they went to Head Start and they were supposed to go to the preschool, or is that what's going on?
That's some of the issue.
And so, and we don't know, and so the Head Start doesn't have the right number of kids, or the preschool has too many or not enough, and I'm just trying to make sure this cover sounds like somebody can't figure out where they're supposed to go.
That is correct.
This is going to have them talk about who's deciding what the definition of is.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Danny Carroll. I would ask if Ms. Price is in the audience, if she would like to make her way to the table for testimony as we wait for Senator Carroll's question. Ms. Price, you're more than welcome to first identify yourself for the record, please, and proceed with any testimony that you may have. Microphones? Yeah.
Push? Am I good?
You're good if it's green. Yes, thank you.
It's green. My name is Sharon Price. I'm with Community Action Agencies who represent Head Start programs. And so I've prepared some remarks today to kind of keep me on track so that I didn't forget anything that I wanted to say to you guys. And so today has been very interesting listening to all of the testimony. We've talked about working together. We've talked about disasters. We've talked about COVID. And community action agencies and Head Start programs and school districts know very well about all of the effects that are going to happen or predicted to happen with children due to the global pandemic that we've just gone through. During this time, those two bodies have worked hand in hand on the front lines at the beginning of this pandemic. They found a way to work together to do every single thing that was in the best interest of children and families in their communities all across Kentucky. I'm thinking if they can find a way to get along during the most desperate times and find a way to collaborate, because that's what this is all about. It's all about collaborations. I'm not going to talk to you guys about the benefits of early childhood education. I believe that you guys know that already, and that's not what's on the table here. But one of the things that I know is that if the pandemic has disrupted our normal and forced us to face challenges, we've also learned and remembered about the benefits of partnerships. It doesn't mean that every partnership is going to be easy, but every partnership is valuable. We heard everybody talk about that today. The superintendents that sat up here and said that they relied on each other, those are partnerships. The community action agencies that are in those areas with those Head Start programs that were out there caring for those children and families in the middle of this disaster that happened, those are partnerships. And partnerships are not always easy, but they're vital. The full utilization. Why is this important? Some of you guys were asking, what is the real deal here? The real deal here is that we want to make sure, the federal statute wants to make sure that federal dollars are spent caring and providing services for children before we use state dollars. It's that simple. You asked the question, does this mean that we're not able to get our numbers? People are fighting about numbers when I believe that people can come together and come to a common conclusion to work together. This is not as hard as what we're making it out to be. And so when you look at that, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not duplicating services anywhere. That's why that full utilization agreement is so important for us now, because if the school district is doing something, Head Start doesn't want to do that. We want to collaborate so that everything works seamlessly together. That's what this is all about. No duplication, but also spend the federal dollars first before you spend the state dollars. Maximize the dollars that are coming into our communities. We have people that can't get along. We need to work harder with them. But this is what we want to propose to you today. We're not here because we want to cause trouble. That's not why we're here. We're here because we believe that there is another way. I know that the way that the wording is written right now, it appears as if the Head Start programs have authority over the school districts. I get that being a problem because the real truth is the Head Start program does not have authority over the school district, nor does the school district have authority over the Head Start program. We ask respectfully that this language not be taken out, but be amended. And the first thing that we want to do is have a joint certification between the superintendent and the Head Start program, have a joint collaboration. But if the problem is authority, which is what I'm feeling, that the school district doesn't want it to appear as if Head Start has authority over them, then we need to have a third party that is looking at this. It can't be the school system, because if the authority is the problem, where one has authority over the other, then we might as well leave it the way that it is. I respectfully ask you guys to consider maximizing state dollars, continuing to have the language in, using a joint certification, and then having a third party that is not the chief state officer of education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate and I respect your comments fully. And the bill, once again, the goal is to improve upon the collaboration. One of the things that you mentioned there, and I think the sub is going to help in terms of enhancing that Head Start director position and the role in the decision making. When we get into a mediator or third party, we are dealing with some hypotheticals. We're dealing with how do we select that third party? What's the process for that? We're getting into something that's more of a layer of a bureaucracy of going through a proper kind of chain that can be put into place. That's my only rebuttal to looking at the third party. I'm more than happy to work with Community Action Council. I think I see some nods, head shaking yes, because I've done that to this step of the bill. I will continue to listen and continue to collaborate the best that I can as the bill sponsor. But I do appreciate your testimony for today.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. But first, Senator Carroll had a question earlier. I just want to make sure. Okay. Senator Thomas, is it a question or a comment that you have? Please proceed.
First of all, Ms. Price, it's good to see you again.
Very good to see you.
And full disclosure to everyone, last year, Ms. Price and I worked through the mayor's office on creating an early childhood program, or advocating for early childhood program through the mayor's Racial and Diversity Equity Task Force. So I know Ms. Price very well. I know her. She does an excellent job as head of the Head Start program and community action there in Fayette County. So it's good to see you again, Ms.
Thank
Price.
you.
I'll be more formal here. Ms. Price, as you well know, the governor has advocated for an early childhood program that's universally applied to all students. How do you and this is just a question for my own edification. How do you see that working in conjunction with Head Start, or can the two coexist? Because Head Start is limited to those students who are educationally disadvantaged, whereas the governor's proposal for early child education will be universal to all students, irregardless of or irrespective of income.
So, Senator Thomas, my response to that is, I think that in his proposal is not going to be a snap of the fingers and it's going to happen. The school districts do not have the infrastructure for universal pre-K because they're limited by space right now. Currently, in a lot of the school districts, you have double session classrooms that are happening 2.5 hours a day in the morning, 2.5 hours a day in the evening. So if you do that universal pre-K, and it's not full day, and it is full day, then where are those children going to go? But when we worked on that project together, I think it's going to take all of us working together. It's going to take the school districts, it's going to take the Head Start programs, and it's going to take the child development centers that we know have been critical in people going back to work. All of that is going to have to work as a complete unit. And I'll tell you this, I received an email yesterday, there is funding coming down the pike for the school districts, grants coming down the pipe for the school districts to partner with the Head Start programs and early childhood education. That means that possibility and that relationship still has to be there. There is room at the end for everybody. Everybody just needs to be willing to work together to make it happen. We know that where a child lives should not influence their trajectory in their life. Where children are, they can learn where they are. They can learn where they are. We do a lot of things that I would do quite differently, to be honest with you, Senator Thomas. We spend money on transporting children. Children go to child development centers, then they get on a bus and they go to the preschool program, then they're there for 2.5 hours, then they go back to the child care center. All of that for 3 and 4-year-old children. They have rules here, they have rules there. If we would take it and we would stabilize children and keep them where they are and have the Head Start programs, the school districts and the child care centers all working together, we could get this done. That's what it's going to take.
Ms. Price, thank you for your comments. We do have a motion on the bill. Do we have a second? We have a second, Senator Stivers. Mariah, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll,
Vote aye, Mr. Chairman. Look forward to further discussion.
Senator Givens, Senator Harper Angel,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
I vote aye. I want to move the process forward. A suggestion might be that the AG could be an arbitrator. That might be under his purview, and I vote aye at this time. Thank you.
Senator Higdon,
I vote aye. Can I explain my aye vote, please, Mr.
Please
Chairman?
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with you on some changes if needed, and I vote aye.
Senator Kerr, Senator Meredith, Senator Neal,
I vote aye, but I would like to encourage the sponsor of the legislation to discuss this further regarding this particular issue and possibly explore entertaining an amendment, not move it too fast through the process so it can get more thoughtful consideration. I hesitate just a little bit because I know the intentions are good, and I heard what you said, and I agree there has to be collaboration and so forth. I'm not sure the mechanics in terms of the language here sets up the result that's going to get us where we want to be. I don't know, really. But I'm encouraging you to reach out and discuss this further and see if we can do more with it.
Thank you.
Senator Southworth,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
I am going to echo all of the comments of Senator Neal. I think the number one issue I keep finding all over the place is we can't get a clear org chart, and we don't have a clear org chart. You can't assign responsibilities, and people can't take responsibility for their areas. And frankly, I actually don't know, and I had another question I was going to ask, but I know the hour is late, and generally it looks like we're maybe heading in the right direction, but who's the head of this? Who's the right person to address this? Needs to be, I don't really know, but I do think it's a good idea to get something down on paper, so this is obviously a start.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to explain my aye vote, please.
Please proceed.
Okay. This much I do know. I know the sponsor of this bill, Senator Wise, and I know the person who testified today, Ms. Price. They're both well-intentioned, honorable people. Obviously, there's a problem here. I have been a very strong advocate of early child education, but obviously there's a lot more that needs to be worked out than I have knowledge of at this point. I think we need to move the process forward because I know them as both well-intentioned and honorable people. I'm gonna vote aye, but I want to dig more in this process to find a solution that will benefit the children of Kentucky for generations to come.
Thank you.
Senator West. Aye. Senator Wilson. Aye. Chair Wise.
Aye. By a vote of 12-0, no nays, the bill proceeds. Senate Bill 60. Thank you all so much for your attendance today. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Thank you.